Hi there, friends. Before we dive in, we want to let you know something important. While this podcast does feature a marriage and family therapist, we are not your therapist. This is a space for informational and educational purposes only. We're here to have a deep conversation over coffee. If you find yourself feeling stuck or overwhelmed, we encourage you to reach out to a trusted therapist, counselor, coach in your area who can give you personalized support you deserve. Because let's be real, life is way too hard to go at it alone, and your emotions are way too valuable to ignore. Okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get to the good stuff. Welcome to the Connection Codes podcast, where we help you go from disconnection and confusion to clarity, confidence, and connection. Whether it's in your marriage, your business, parenting, or just figuring out what's going on inside of you, we're here to help make emotions feel less overwhelming and way more useful. I'm your host, Tera, mom of four, CEO, speaker, and a big believer that emotions are not a problem to fix, but a tool to master. The Connection Codes are tools created by marriage and family therapist Dr. Glenn Hill and his incredible wife, Phyllis. They've helped thousands of people just like you experience real transformation. Let's get into it. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Austin, Texas, getting ready to go speak at an event. And that morning, I found a lump in my armpit and was flooded with fear. I've had lots of members of my family to have breast cancer, and it was really intense feeling. Wow. And so I had to go speak. I had to shove that thing aside, and we didn't talk about it the whole rest of the day. Wes and I just acted like nothing existed. Everything was fine. Then I made it through the whole rest of the next day. Nothing existed. And I could feel as the day continued to progress, deeper and more fear, more intensity all day long was growing in my body. We finally got to dinner and I was like, I'm sorry, we've got to talk about this. And we talked for about 10 minutes and it was done. And truly, it felt like a weight was lifted off of me. And so we're going to talk today about how when you're experiencing that emotion, that intensity, the longer you put it off to connect, the longer you put it off to process, the deeper and more intense that it will become.
Hello, world.
Hi, friends. So, wow, today's topic, as I was thinking about this topic, for so many of you, and this is my story too, so I'm wanting to share that as far as my story goes. The longer we wait, the deeper it gets, the harder it gets. And I'm not even saying that exactly right. So give it back to the verbiage that we used. Do you remember the exact verbiage?
The longer we wait, the deeper the roots grow.
Okay, the roots grow deeper the longer we wait. And I think for some of you listeners, as you start your Connection Codes journey, or as you progress, or as you journey, you realize that there are things that you have avoided talking about, avoided dealing with. Sometimes we don't even realize we've avoided, right? And as you've heard my journey about anger, I did not realize that I was avoiding anger. When I was introduced to Connection Codes, I didn't do emotion. So all of them were a real big surprise for me. All of them were very challenging. And as I learned to feel them in my body, as I learned to connect to myself in those emotions, then I began, and I've shared this in other podcasts, guilt and shame were hard for me because of my upbringing. Kind of that if you have guilt, then you're sinning and you're going to hell. And shame and guilt, are so closely linked. And so that one was really hard for me. I could say to Glenn, well, I feel sad that I hurt you, but it was really, really hard for me to say, I feel guilt that I hurt you. I didn't even realize that I was avoiding that verbiage, and Glenn helped me see that one. And the whole sad part never quite set right with him. So it was a conversation we had multiple times. And then I realized, I'm allergic I'm allergic to guilt and shame because of the way I was raised, that I associated that with hell and, no redemption, no coming back from that. So that was one that I have learned to shift as far as my understanding and how I experience that in my body. And then I've shared a lot about coming to realize that anger is the one I was really terrified of. And I was made aware of that and still didn't deal with it. Like, I would say it was probably January of 2023 that, through the help of another practitioner who was working with me, she was the one who kind of introduced that idea that I had a lot of anger stored in my body. And I'm like, no, I'm the most loving, chill, happy person. Because for me, anger are explosive people who show a lot, and I'm like, that's not me. And I had to redefine it. I had to actually learn about anger and how to connect my body to anger and release it, because it was causing so much damage in my body, but I didn't understand any of that. So when we talk about that idea of the root growing, the longer you put it off, I've just seen it really play out personally. And you share about finding a lump and not talking about it, right, for a few days. And then I think, oh my word, when I was made aware of this anger thing, I waited 2 years.
Yeah.
But not just 2 years of ignoring it, but 2 years of talking about how fearful I was of the anger. It was a dark hole I didn't want to go near. It was a door that if you open it, it's pitch black in there. And my thought is, if I go in, I'll never find my way out. I mean, you've listened to many podcasts and I've mentioned that. And I think about what that looks like for me is so intense. The idea that by not dealing with it, the root has grown deeper, right? The root grew deeper. And so many of you listening may realize there's things that I have not dealt with where now the root feels like I can never get to the bottom of it.
Can I ask, what are the effects of the roots? Why do you need to get the root out? If you're listening and you're like, oh, I've got these roots, what effect were those roots having on your body where you do feel the need to uproot them?
Yeah, what makes it matter?
What makes it matter? Yeah.
Well, first I want to give a little bit of an analogy about if any of you are gardeners and you're dealing with weeds, which right now I've planted flowers and there's certain weeds that just won't stop. And everybody always says, you got to get the root. You got to get the root. You can just keep cutting it off or just kind of pulling it out a little bit, but until you get the root. So it just keeps manifesting itself. That's, to me, I can deal with that imagery. How does that affect humans? Like, I think about that for myself. I think it holds me back. I think it physically messes up the healing properties of my body.
Yeah.
I think it breaks down the immune system. I think that anger getting stored in your body starts to mess with your cells. I think there's a huge science behind that. We often reference the book, The Body Keeps the Score, which if you're not familiar with that work, it really does show in a much more scientific way how our bodies get really messed up by not getting the root out. And I think that for me personally, it's wild because I remember coming back in January and just finally saying to Glenn, okay, I'm ready. I'm terrified of it, but I'm just going to say it all. And it's just wild because it's always, like you said at dinner, it was a 10-minute conversation and then you felt so much lighter. I would say that first conversation that I had been scared to death of, I guess, that fear, that anger let me open this door. And the biggest one started with the person closest to me, which is Glenn. And I know there's anger that continues to come out. It's almost like it was this is nasty. This is gross, but like a toilet that needs to be unclogged. And once you unclog, you hear this incredible like suction that happens, right? And I didn't realize there was so much backlog of other anger, but I was so afraid of what I thought was the biggest that I couldn't get to any of the other.
Yeah.
And now that I have had that conversation with Glenn and he's still sitting here beside me, it was very painful. And I would say it was a couple of weeks of pretty painful for Glenn, especially just interactions, questions. definitely there was some wounding in that. But I would say if you're listening and not watching, he's still sitting beside me. But it's also freed me. Now that I know the power of it, I've been able to like stand in really important moments and go, whoa, I'm feeling a lot of anger about this.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, wow, I'm saying it. I'm saying it in the moment. I'm not holding it. I'm saying it in the moment. And I've done it multiple times since with Glenn. And you just see I feel like I'm coming alive in that sense. And do I have a long way to go? I have a lot of growing to do, which I'm excited about. Back to the question, I feel like when you've not gotten to the root or have gotten the root out, you're always limiting yourself. Part of your energy is still going to that root. So I think it limits you with whatever it is. Like, I don't think it's necessarily with everybody anger, but there's other things where it's like, I just don't want to face that. And I get really frustrated right now. I'm reading just, it's a historical fiction, but it's someone living through World War II and some of the things that she did. She lived to be 99, but she could never forgive herself for some of the things that she did in World War II. I think there's a lot of people, you don't have to live through a war to just live with regret forever. And she just would not tell people what had happened. Like she felt that she had to keep that inside. She could never tell the people closest to her what she lived through in the war. And that brings me a lot of sadness. And then I think, oh girl, how often have you done that? Just kept your mouth shut for the sake of peace. You think you're going to arrive at peace by keeping your mouth shut instead of just stepping out and just actually turning around and saying when you feel hurt, turning around and saying when you feel anger, instead of turning your back to it and walking away from it for the sake of peace. And so I think that you limit who you are when you don't face and do the work to get to the bottom of that root, to get all of that out.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think that's incredibly powerful. And for our listeners, I think that for some people, it is an actual emotion. Like you'd mentioned, guilt and anger. And then there's also the day-to-day moments that we experience, a conflict with our partner or with our kid, that if we just stuff it and hours later, we're still thinking about it. It's still in our psyche and it doesn't dissipate. It builds and builds and builds. It actually makes me think about the quote, one of our protocols that says that, Glenn, you're going to have to help me with this. If I'm not heard, I get louder until I eventually give up.
Yeah.
And so I'm picturing this emotion. It gets louder and louder and louder in our body. Yeah. But then when it gives up, that's when it's actually implanted. That's when it actually starts to affect our immune system and our bodily functions, all of these other issues, because it gave up.
Yeah.
And for many of us, we are living in the louder stage because there's so many things dysregulating us all the time, where we are operating from a place of chaos in our bodies. Yeah. So to actually start the work of unrooting things slowly. Yeah. Glenn, I feel like you have...
Yeah, well, I mean, the protocol, we must feel heard. It's not just be heard, because how many times have we sat with people? It's like, he says to his wife, I heard you all 11 times that you said it. Well, his ears worked. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about the auditory reception of it. But for the other to actually feel heard. And we talk about the orphanage where the babies, they made noise. The caretakers heard the noise, but the babies did not feel heard, and they just eventually give up and stop being functioning as humans. And, I always think about Rowan and Malachi. We and their parents are really, really good. I don't love that terminology, but we don't care anymore. We adore them. But when Malachi is completely heartbroken that whatever, he doesn't get to play in the sink, he feels sad about 20 seconds, about 30 seconds. And we don't throw him by that. And that's what I mean by we don't care. We're not like, oh my gosh, calm down, which are the two most wasted words in the English language. You're fine, you're fine. That's also on the list of wasted words, because he's not fine. He's heartbroken that he's not going to get to play in the sink. Well, it doesn't matter to us, but it matters. My favorite of Echo's quote, she goes, if we are not present with them when they're little with their little problems, they will not come to us when they're big, with their big problems. And we think we did a good job parenting because our whatever 12-year-old, 15-year-old, 20-year-old, 30-year-old doesn't have any problems. No, they just don't share it with you. They have plenty of problems. But back to that whole thing, and I love what you share about that, Tera. Not communicating, not conveying the emotion, it doesn't change it. It's still there. It makes it worse, not better. And we have been trained, I was certainly trained, Phyllis was trained, just to shut up about it. And that's actually mature and godly, spiritual, something that if you can absorb all of this, then now somehow you are a more mature person, a more stable person. We're not supposed to do that as humans. And that, I'm not talking about behavior. I'm not talking about action. I'm not talking about, well, I was upset, so I went and keyed his car because I didn't like him. I'm not talking about that. That's behavior. But to be able to say, I felt really hurt by what you said, by what you did, that's the human condition. And it doesn't change it if you're able to go, I don't. What's the saying? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm you. That is such a lie. Mm-hmm. And we tell little ones that from 5 years old on, and it is not true. And of course, I've shared on this program, I broke my arm when I was 5 years old, never said a word to anybody. A 5-year-old breaks his arm, doesn't say ow. And when I share that story, people are like, what? That's weird. That's what we work with people. Like, Tera, you're fine. Get over it. Get over it. And I don't care if she's 5, 15, 25. No, she's not supposed to, quote unquote, get over it. She's supposed to process through it. And we now have enough science in it. And it's sketchy research because humans are so complex. There's so many ingredients. But the research is longitudinal enough now that we see Dr. Steve Case, Dr. Jim Cohn, especially their work, and there are many others as well, that these emotions have an effect. You can't, it's undeniable. We can't say, Tera did today what she did because of what happened 3.5 years ago on a Tuesday afternoon. Well, how can we possibly guarantee that's true? But we do know now, we have enough large sample longitudinal studies that we know that they do have an effect.
Yeah, what I appreciate about this conversation is that often we are talking about relationships and being in a relationship with somebody else. That's a huge part of our mission. And for me, this conversation is about ourselves and how often we are disregarding ourselves. Not just disregarding our partner, but actually disregarding what's happening in our own body. And so I think it's really important for our community to really reflect. We spend a lot of energy with talking about partnership, but actually self-reflect. Look, what parts of your life are you disregarding? What parts are yelling at you and getting louder? Stop them now, because when they stop getting louder, it is creating a lot more pain, deep, deep pain that you can't necessarily see or you wouldn't attribute to the emotion or the actual action. And that's what, even in me sharing that story, is I feel so fortunate that I found these tools when I did, because I have weeded out a lot of my garden. And so for me to be dysregulated for 2 days, that's an intense experience.
So can I throw something out there? And I'm not voting. I'm just asking the question. What if we lived in a culture where Tera could get on stage and go, I am flooded with fear. How big was the group? Do you remember?
It was about 100 people.
Okay. 100 people out there, 100 humans. I assume this wasn't cattle and sheep. Yeah. These are humans. So 100 humans, you get on stage and go, oh my gosh, I am flooded with fear. I just felt under my arm, and there's a lump there, and I'm going to do my presentation, but I just need to process that with you. Now, are there some jerks in the audience that'd be like, I can't believe she said that's so stupid? Forget them. That there probably are, but whatever. And my dream is that we create a culture where everybody oohs you. The whole freaking crowd is like, oh, wow. So I just wonder if we could create that revolution, because you have the right to convey what's happening for you. And I get it. Maybe not if you're officiating a wedding.
Which I've done. That's my favorite thing I've ever done.
But I'm just saying, I almost would say, oh, Tera, you're just going to have to shut up about this one. Girl, go officiate the wedding. We're here to celebrate the bride and groom. I don't really want to, I don't know. But I just wonder that. at times. If we just presented our authentic self and revolutionized our culture where Tera is allowed to be human, because that's human. That was real for you. You're not pretending. You're just not making up a scenario that was happening. So what do you think would happen if you had done that?
Well, so for me, like, this will be the first time my mom hears about this when this podcast comes out.
Sorry.
She doesn't know that this situation has happened.
Okay.
And I'm fine. I do have a follow-up mammogram next week, but everything is checking out. I'm crystal clear, good. And so, I don't know. I can see that being the dream scenario to operate from that place. I think that in my brain, I thought if I talk about it, it's going to become bigger. And so maybe if I don't talk about it, it'll actually go away in my brain. But that's just not how we work. That is not how we're built. That's not how we function, which is why I'm so glad that we're having this conversation today for people to realize that's not how we're built. Actually, there is research, there is science that when I say fear, that my amygdala can calm down, at least until it's re-triggered, until it's reactivated, which we've talked about recently on the podcast. And so, Phyllis, I'm curious for you now, because you're in a place where I have gotten to witness you process anger several times over the last 6-ish weeks, maybe. What are you recognizing the difference for you is? And now that you're touching the anger, you're recognizing it in the moment versus the previous getting stuck. Are you at a place where you can see a difference in the impact that it's having in your body yet?
Well, I don't know which to say first, just to answer it or back up a little bit, but I'll just answer it with, that's the other thing too, is to realize, I think especially with the human body, when we've done a lot of damage to our human body, we don't just do this one thing and wake up the next day healthier than ever. So there is a reckoning. And I think that I'm very much on a journey right now where I'm putting a lot of energy into undoing. And it's interesting, just with one of the doctors that I'm seeing, because I'm very impatient with just my body. I want a lot more results much faster. And he's really kind and tender, but he also just reminds me that basically I did a lot of damage before I started getting help. So there's kind of a price to pay, which I think that kind of goes back to, man, I want people to understand the truth behind emotion, like the truth of emotion, to understand that this is for your sake. Because I do agree, you said so often, and even when we first started this podcast, and of course, Glenn's private practice is mostly couples. It's like you go, oh, this is a great couple tool. You know, these connection codes gives you great tools to connect with humans. It's like, yeah, but I think we're seeing more and more, these are some great tools to connect with yourself. And if we get this and we see the benefit for ourselves, then we're more passionate about, man, I got to share this with my kids, my grandkids, my neighbors. Like, this got to get into every school so that kids can learn this from a young age, right? Before all the damage is done. And then we're like backtracking, trying to undo the damage. So the core emotion wheel for me is a very powerful personal tool that works great in connecting with others, but it works incredibly to connect with myself. And I think there are some of you maybe going, wow, that's not what I thought it was all about. I thought the whole point of the core emotion wheel was to do it with someone else and to connect with that person, versus, you mean this is for my benefit. This is what actually releases this out of my body. And I think we're going to have to we just need to say it on our podcast more and more, that this starts with you. This is a very personal journey. And I don't know if that answers your question. Like, I don't think that I woke up the next day feeling like, wow, something incredible energy has been released.
Totally.
I do feel a big shift in my energy. I do. Like, just in this year, since I've really started knocking down these walls surrounding anger, especially, and just kind of going, no, I deserve to say ow when I feel hurt. And I deserve to speak my anger when I feel anger. And just to realize, and I think I do understand the difference between being regulated and dysregulated. I don't want to spend a day dysregulated. And I had one day this week that was kind of emotionally just tougher. And I went to my personal trainer and she was doing some check-ins, but it was all based on not just answering questions, but it was like a machine was checking on my body in a sense. And she goes, this is not making sense. Like these numbers are not making sense. And so she goes, are you really stressed today? And I had to laugh. And I just went, okay, give me a minute, check in with myself. And I said, yeah, I guess today I am. And she goes, well, let's retest next week because something's not making sense here. And I think, really? Like, wow, does my body immediately get off track because I am dysregulated emotionally today? Like I've had too many things come at me that I'm just stuck in. And I think, wow, like if we all had this kind of technology in our homes where we could just plug ourselves in and go, how am I doing? And you go, wow, look this is why my energy is really low today because I'm just so emotionally dysregulated. Yeah. And that we could do the work for ourselves. It just does. It brings your energy into a different place. And I think that is a scary thing. It really is. I think for a lot of listeners, that comes to me for you to be willing to do the work. It's so much easier, especially if you're in a family unit, to blame your kids, to blame your spouse, to blame your upbringing, to blame your whatever, instead of going, wait a minute. Okay, there's stories in all of that. There's validity in a lot of that. But I actually need to love myself enough to do the work for myself and to go, wait a minute, I need to be growing as for myself. I need to be getting the root of all of this out and I need to look at it, even if it's just me doing all the work.
Yeah. But you think about it, we do this well with our cars. Like nobody would ever get a flat tire and then go, but I have a full tank of gas. So I'm okay. And my windshield wipers are great. I even have the wiper fluid thing full. It's like, well, you have a flat tire. It's like, no. Did you see this paint job? I mean, the paint job is exquisite. That doesn't make any sense. You have a flat tire, whichever one it is. You know, you don't have a flat tire, but you're out of gas. Yeah, but you got 4 really good tires. You just replaced them. It would be so bizarre. You know, with our home, the front door's open, it's raining, and the water's coming in the front door. Yeah, but our dishwasher works really well. And our bed is made, it looks so good. We would never do that. That just sounds stupid. Well, the same is true. And we do that as individuals and culturally. We're like, we'll just count your blessings. You know, I don't know if I've ever shared that. I'll probably offend somebody here. That was one of my least favorite songs growing up. Do you know this song, Count Your Blessings?
Name them one by one. You want to sing it, babe?
Maybe we should. And whoever wrote it, I'm not mad at them. I'm not judging their faith. But it's such a horrible message. Count your blessings, name them one by one. And it basically is a very eloquent, melodical way to say, shut up. Just stop it. Stop processing through. And again, I don't know who wrote it 150 years ago, but it's such a bad, and if it's blessed any of you listeners, I'm happy for you. I don't care. But it's so, we just don't do that. Malachi's sad about this. He fell down and hurt his hands. I'm like, buddy, you've had plenty of food today. You should be grateful. That doesn't make any sense. He does it. He holds his little hands up and he's got little pebbles on them, you know, and then life is over and the universe is going to explode soon. It has nothing to do with whether he has had enough food today or if he has clean clothes. He's got little rocks on his hands and he's sad about that. And I feel so much emotion about that because I think we're doing really, really well with Rowan and Malachi and being present. I do think, oh my word, I miss so badly with myself, with Phyllis, with our kids, our older grandkids. I just didn't know all this stuff. And we miss so badly telling people to stop it, to shut up. I did have to also mention this. It's such a joy point. And at first it was a pain point, but Phyllis, just the last few weeks, I started using the phrase, I need to schedule downtime. And the first time she said that to me, I'm like, what? Because that almost sounds like an oxymoron to me, schedule downtime. But it's true. Because, and you know, I always say she's perpetual motion. She's amazing, phenomenal, and that's the upside. The downside is, she forgot about downtime. She just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. And everybody watches her. It's just like, oh my gosh, she's so amazing. Well, she is. But the downside is, she forgot the downtime. She forgot to take care of herself. She forgot to be aware of herself. And so in her situation, because I'm thinking downtime just happens automatically. What's that movie we saw recently? It was so good. They were in Italy. Remember the three, what were they called? Antonio. There were three women named Antonio. What was that movie? Remember it was this couple? Oh, shoot. I can't remember. But anyway, they said, and there's supposed to be some Italian phrase for it, doing nothing well or something. Remember you know what I'm talking about? The three women who would just sit there like all day.
Oh, now I remember.
Three best friends.
In the courtyard.
Yeah, what was the name of that
around
movie?
the fountain.
We'll have to think of that. Yeah.
I don't know.
And we don't do that well culturally, especially in the United States. We're known as, which again, there's an upside to it that gets you really successful business-wise, financials-wise, but there's a real downside to it that we lose ourselves as humans. And then, of course, we lose our connections. And I may have shared before, this years ago, but I had a guy, if you went to downtown Nashville and said his name, everybody knows who he is. He's been through 5 marriages. Several years ago on Christmas, he spent Christmas Day alone. He has children and grandchildren, and none of them would let him come over. You have to not like somebody who's a relative to say, you are not allowed in my home on Christmas morning. That's intense. And he told me, he said, if I could go back, and I thought it was so funny because it was clear to him. He said, I'd make $45,000 a year and I would learn how to take care of my relationships. And it was always $45,000. I thought that was funny because he's very, very, very wealthy. And if you went to downtown Nashville and said his name, everybody would be like, oh my gosh, he's amazing. Wow. Big winner, big. And he's probably 70 or older by now. I'm the eternal optimist. I don't give up on people, but I'm just like, dang. It's a lot of years of missing, and there are fewer years ahead of him, and it's incredibly painful. So we want people to get this today.
Yeah.
Now, to not waste another day or week or month.
Well, I do want to point out, because I think we have listeners that may be on the other side where the living in positive mindsets is like really help them. I mean, research has shown that gratitude journaling and practicing gratitude is really, really beneficial for us. But what we want to do is like place in the argument, quote unquote argument, that actually processing out these other emotions, not getting the shame or the guilt to take root or the anger to take root or the hurt with our partners to take root, we actually can live in a continual state, like a much higher state of joy and gratitude and these other more feel-good moments. At least that's been my experience. And which is why if I am living in fear for 2 days and not processing it, not sharing it, I feel that really deeply because I operate from a place of joy and gratitude at this season. I have moments of fear. I have moments of hurt. I have moments of shame, but they don't root. They're not taking root anymore. And so much of what, Phyllis, you are unweeding and that I've had to unweave. And I know there's still old ones stuck in there that I just don't want to deal with. So I'm just going to ignore them for a bit longer because they're not affecting me right now. But they're old. They're not new. They're not things that are adding in today on March 2nd or whatever date today is. And that makes a huge impact. So actually for our listeners, if you're like, where do I even start? What do I do? Being able to recognize the emotions that are firing for you, that's the key. Can we have a real moment? Most of us were never taught how to actually understand our emotions, let alone talk about them without things going sideways. That's why we created the Core Emotion Wheel. It's a simple tool that helps you name what you're feeling fast, like under 4 minutes fast. And once you can name it, you can start moving through it. That means fewer fights, less shutdown, and more connection in your relationships. Whether you're processing something big or just trying not to snap at your kids over snack time, this tool changes the game. And it's totally free. Grab it right now at connectioncodes.co/will or in the show notes. Seriously, don't keep surviving your day. This is the first step to actually feeling better.
Yeah, and can I emphasize that? Because I just want to make sure people get that. The point is not at all to not be grateful, to not celebrate, to not enjoy or anything. But the point is, if you step on a nail and I say, well, drink enough water today, Tera, and Tera goes, Okay, that is true. Tera, make sure you consume enough protein today. That is true. I'm not thinking, but it's both. You also have a nail in your foot. And what we've done, I think, certainly my religious background, is we're just like, oh, no, ignore the nail in your foot. Just get enough liquid today, protein, get outside, do some exercise. And I'm sitting there going, I have a nail in my foot. Well, stop focusing on that. You're being pessimistic. You're being negative. No, I'm not. I have a nail in my foot. The brain doesn't distinguish physical pain from emotional pain. And that's my great sadness, because it's both. And you're totally right. And that's fantastic. But if we don't get the nail out of the foot, it's really tough for people to even be grateful. And all they're doing is blocking, ignoring the pain. That does not change the nail in your foot. So we have to do both of those. And my fear is that people have focused on that. Somebody's like, oh, just be positive, get over it, get past it. And, like you said, that the root just grows deeper.
I think we don't understand, because a lot of us were raised on that. And I think a lot of there is right now just have only positive thoughts. I think where we miss with that is that idea, that practical idea of I have stepped on a nail. And if I don't deal with that, it doesn't matter how much sunshine I'm getting, how much water I'm getting, how much protein I'm getting. It's like I do have to deal with the nail that's in my foot. I was just talking to a dear friend this week, and there's a lot of sadness in her life at this moment. And it's kind of like you see, she's usually someone who has a beautiful outdoor space. And this is the time of year you get it all cleaned up and you get it ready to enjoy, right, after the winter. And she has zero desire, interest, energy to do it. And I think that you go, okay, if we don't talk about the sad and the real hurt, and we simply try to get you to just be thankful you even have, a house or you even have an outdoor space, it's like we're skipping a really big step.
Yeah.
We got to sit and talk about the sad and the hurt and acknowledge that there's a lot right there. And until we do, it's like we are not dealing. And I mean, even on a physical level, how bad it would be to have something in your foot and not deal with it. Eventually it can get infected and it can lead to really serious things if we just dealt with it right away. And then keep dealing with it. Because sometimes, especially on the bottom of your foot, if you actually do injure, like cut open your bottom, it is a longer healing process, because we're always wanting to step on that unless we're willing to stay off of our foot for a while. So it's like, oh, okay. So it's not just a one time and done. The hurt may need to be revisited. And that's what I love about the wheel is that, so every day my hurt may be the exact same words, but I'm doing this for my benefit to get out that deep pain, that deep hurt.
Yeah, and I would suggest that actually leads to gratitude. I mean, if I'm able to share with you my hurt and you're present with me, you're safe for me, you ooh me, follow my energy, I feel so incredibly grateful. And I'm so thrilled that, wow, you're my friend. And I felt hurt because of what you said. But we process it through if we are good connection coders. And 45 seconds later, I'm more grateful because you were safe for me and present for me. So I'm faith-based. I think that's part of the genius of God. Now I'm better off because you hurt me, and not so much because you hurt me, but because you were safe for me to process the hurt. And now we're actually more bonded, more connected because of the hurt, which is amazing to me.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you both for sharing that. And so for our listeners, if you're like, okay, I am ready to stop living with these intense roots, and how do I even begin to get where Phyllis is today, where she's able to recognize and say it in the moment so it's not adding to the roots. All of that has come from the core emotion wheel, which is the simple tool that Dr. Glenn and Phyllis created that helps you to re-identify the emotions that are firing. So when that fear hits you, you can process it quickly. When that hurt hits you, you can process it quickly. So it doesn't take hold, it doesn't take root, and it doesn't become louder and louder and louder inside of your body. And so we do encourage you to do this with a safe person. But if you don't have a safe person right now, journaling it and saying it out loud with yourself. As someone wrote in, she does it in her yoga practice, and she does 8 sun salutations every day and moves the emotion through her body as she processes what she's experiencing. And I absolutely loved that imagery of her doing that. And so we are now going to share what this actually looks like to identify what's happening and to say it out loud, to process it out.
I have to throw in, because it was just so exciting this morning, so much joy. One of our coaches shared that they're going to Moldova, and was it Russian? Can't remember.
Yep, Russian.
Translating the wheel. And we don't have no idea. The wheel's been translated in so many different languages now. It's such a simple tool. And it's just cross-language, it's cross-cultural, because it's based on the human condition, not some specifically, I grew up in the South. This is human. And it's true for every human on the planet. And it's so exciting to hear that, wow, this is just having so much effect in so many different settings, different languages, different cultures. A lot of power in it.
Yep. Lots of joy with our coaches for sure.
Yeah. So who's doing the wheel? You and me?
Yep.
Okay. Who's going first?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, let's see. For me, I shared this morning just the loneliness of this massive task that, our target audience is 8 billion people. That's my great dream and passion. And I'm not an implementer. So it's like, it sounds like a neat idea, but it's pointless. I was talking to, I think, the coaches this morning, that it's like building 30% of a house. You go, I nailed it. I mean, I did a great job building that 30% of the house. And it's like, well, that's only 30% of the house. It's irrelevant. And sadness in that at times, just looking at the whole picture. So much joy with our coaches, our coaching program. These people, I mean, it's wild. They are just on the train. They're moving the train, not because we're pushing them, not because we're holding them accountable or anything, but these are just remarkable people. There is fear at times when I hear people that discovered the connection codes 10 weeks ago and they're out doing a conference or a seminar. I'm like,
Wow.
I hope they know what they're doing. We worked on this for decades, and they've been aware of it for a few weeks. So tons of joy, but also fear in it. It's always guilt and shame, just me being more aware, more prepared, more capable, more competent, producing, being who people need. That's always a struggle. For me, I mentioned fear. Is that all of them already?
No.
Surely not.
Missed hurt.
Hurt. Oh, earlier, I always feel hurt when you feel hurt and sadness or shame or whatever, just when I say one simple sentence. And then you just get so knocked off course. And I'm like, how the heck did that happen? Because I'm thinking I'm just saying a simple statement that, oh, you're wearing a ring and a watch. And then you feel really stabbed by that. I get confused, which is usually under that is hurt. And then, did I mention anger? I don't think I mentioned anger. I felt some anger yesterday because I didn't feel like walking 5 miles. And I did anyway. But I've had a few of those days the last few weeks where I just really had to, that anger pushed me. And now I'm kind of stuck because I'm on day 782, so I don't think I can ever stop.
Wow.
If I'd quit after like 8 days, it'd be like, it was just 8 days. 782 days, that's a lot. So I keep going, which is good.
Thank you. All right. A lot of joy that this week we've had beautiful weather, been outside, sitting around the fire with the kids and the grandkids has been super fun. Felt shame this morning when I walked past, didn't know the camera was on and the audience was already there. So felt shame in that moment, and then felt hurt by our interaction right after that. Confusing, I think. So hurt. And let's see, anger. Yep, felt anger earlier with a text that I had received and just an expectation that happened that I had and it didn't happen. So there was just anger in that. Now that needs to be a conversation. That probably falls under some fear that I need to have that conversation. Things need to be really brought to the table. So some fear there. Let's see. I think that I would say my hurt, I said the hurt already. So I'm sad of just, this seems like such a long journey with my legs. I have good days and then I have not good days. So sad in that. There's probably lonely in that because I'm the only one that can do the work for my body to get better, my legs to get better, my hips and all the things I'm dealing with. So probably that's often a lonely experience. And I think that's all 8. Yeah.
Well, thank you both for sharing. Whenever you hear the will, like for Glenn and Phyllis right now, it's serving really 2 purposes. It's allowing them both to understand what's happening with their partner, and it's allowing them to get out of their body what they're experiencing. And the third benefit is that now they've touched the hurt, they've touched the shame. So if it hits again later, they can recognize what it feels like in their body. They've built that emotional muscle. So if you've not already accessed your own core emotion wheel and our download to help guide you through it, there's going to be a link in the show notes. I highly encourage you to go today, download that wheel, and start getting in touch with what is happening in your body, because the benefits of being able to process out are phenomenal, but the detriments of not is living in deep, deep pain within yourself.
Yeah, let me just throw it out there. Try it for 30 days. It won't eat up your liver. So there's no unintended negative consequences from this. Just try it. Again, by yourself. Forget if you don't have a safe person around you, just do it for yourself. A lot of people all over the world use this in prayer. This is just how they roll, and it's every day. They're just processing through. They're also exercising their emotional muscles so that they recognize it, on a Tuesday afternoon at 3:15. So just try it for 30 days and see where it takes you.
And for our other listeners that maybe you've already downloaded the will, you've seen the impact of what we teach. We host workshops, whether it is for a church environment or for a business. If you're like, I want a community around me of people, that is the number one way to get your community on board with this is either bringing one of us in or talking to your leader and saying, hey, I know a program that will help our community to thrive in connection with each other. And so please reach out to us either through a link that'll be below on our website or send us an email. We would love to come and help the people around you and yourself dive deeper into these tools so you can live a life of thriving. I feel like I am thriving because I am regulated and able to show up in deep connection with myself and others. So for everyone listening that have left us that 5-star review, thank you so much. It truly does mean the world to us. It helps us to grow and reach more people with these tools, because we do all of this because
you need this.
You deserve this. So let's do this.
Let's do this.